Okay, hi everyone. I'm glad I could be with you tonight.
Thank you for filming. Thank you.
So I am going to be talking about reflective surfaces and how to paint them in watercolor, and my style is very realistic. So I do put a lot of detail in my paintings. The ones that I brought, you can kind of see I brought things that would show you some of the reflections that I have done, and I just wanted to start by showing you some of the reference photos that I've used previously. So if I can do this and not get a glare. There we go. All right, so this is the reference photo that I took for the Volkswagen Combi that I painted years ago. What I want to do is really kind of zoom in on some of the chrome on this, just so that you can, because I can do that on the iPad and I didn't want to print things really big. So look at this mirror, the side mirror. There's an LA Fitness back there. I can almost read the words, and it's mirrored in there. So you can see the sky, what the sky was like that day. You can see other cars that were parked nearby. So things like the emblem in the front of the car are going to have the sky reflected, and other things that were around are going to reflect off of that. So I guess what I'm trying to do by showing you this is have you not paint a metal like chrome as blue or gray, but as the colors that it would be reflecting. And when it's outside, and you can really see it in the headlamp there. And I have another picture, same day, same vehicle. This one just shows a lot more color, and I'm pretty sure I am reflected in there somewhere taking the picture. So just to kind of give you an idea of how I'm looking at these things, I break these things apart. So the headlamp over here, it definitely has sky going on, and the asphalt that the car is parked on. So reflections, Karen just picked up this book. It doesn't have to be chrome. It can be glass and cut crystal and things, just lots of things will reflect. So if I even put, this water bottle down, you can see that reflections start to form on the page right in front of us. So if I were going to paint that, I would look at how it's pink all around, little edges and things just reflecting the water and the color through there. This happens to be a great model for us, just to kind of show how a cut glass isn't just clear. It's going to have all those different colors reflected in it. So thanks for picking that up tonight. Thanks for buying that book tonight. Couple more, just really quickly. Marbles. I have painted this one. This is the reference photo again. It's not my painting. This is actually the photo. But how fun. Look at these reflections. Pretty. Right? And in the lid, and the glass reflected onto the surface, and each marble has a highlight, but often they're colored.
Oh, wow.
Right?
That's cool. How did you like that, if you don't mind?
That one I actually did, I put it on paper and shined a light on it from one light source. This was in the Harley Davidson showroom. I took a couple pictures of this vehicle. It was my favorite. I don't know why, just like an ice cream shop or something. It just appealed to me, the colors of it. And I've painted this. So this is the reference photo. And really, when you zoom in, you're getting the lights from the showroom, from the ceiling, just like these are in this room tonight. So those were reflecting into the chrome. The vehicle itself was reflecting back into the headlamps on this one. So and here's me taking the picture.
Oh, God. Who are you with?
That's my husband.
Wow.
Yeah. Watching me take a picture of this vehicle. So yeah, I mean, because I have the iPad, I can really zoom in on these things and see what it is. I don't have to paint exactly what it is. I do like to get some of those reflections in. And it doesn't have to be. So here's another one that this is the reference photo that I took at a market in Mexico. And these are little toys, little toy balls that hang there. And when I zoom in, here's the clear one.
Oh, wow.
Look at all the colors reflected in it and the people, the shadows. I mean, you can go crazy how much you do zoom in and how much you do want to put into something. But I'm just sort of pointing out what you can see when you start zooming in on these things. So let's see. Oh, this is right off the internet. If you want to just practice something with reflections, you can find simple things. You don't have to take your own picture necessarily, but even this simple setup that someone else did reflects obviously the white that it's sitting on, the cloth that it's sitting on, but it was in someone's room. And when you start looking closely, there's somebody's curtains and their ceiling fan, and there's other stuff going on that's being reflected inside the bowl that maybe they didn't want to be there, but there it is. And you need to put it in to have it be realistic. Otherwise, you just throw some colors in and give those, just look at the shapes. The shapes are, and I have fun with this. It might drive some of you crazy, but I have fun with this.
Did you take the pictures with your iPad?
Often with my phone.
With your phone?
Yeah, I don't travel a lot with the iPad, so I'll take my phone and take pictures wherever I go. And I have many, many, many pictures that I've not painted. So today, I'm gonna work on part of this vehicle. So this one, I went to Western Fed in Albuquerque in May, and this car was parked on the street, and so I took a couple pictures of it. This would be too much to do in an hour's demo, so I cropped it down, and when I did that, of course, it zoomed in, so now I see even more detail. Wow. So I don't know if I'm making it easier or harder on myself by zooming in like this, but that's what I did for today. Oh, these are, well, I don't have to show you because you just did that book, but this is Lauren McCracken. Oh, yeah. Famous guy, does this reflected light in, he does wood really well and glass really well. Yeah, then I'll just kind of show you what I have so far, because Ruth and I were talking about a baking show and pulling out some wonderful things that I've done ahead. So, my reference photo is printed in color, and I printed it on 4 sheets landscape mode. Some of you may already be using the app. I use it on my Mac, and it's called Split Print, and I can put in what size, based on what size paper I think I want to paint on. I can print this image, and it'll do it on a couple of pieces of paper, and then I just tape them together. And that's an easy way to get your reference photo down. This one I did transfer onto my watercolor paper using graphite paper, and so I taped one end of this down and I did trace it. And
You trace detail?
you know what? It's so particularly round. I don't want to get that wrong. So sometimes I'll do that often, even with my portraits, to get major features in, and then I can go back and add things freehand. But I like to get some major marks in by tracing. Yeah.
Marion, what was on your Mac? Clip art or flip art? Or
Split print.
Split
Print is the application. And that works with Mac. I think it's maybe through the internet for Windows instead of being an app, but I think you can do the same thing. So I also always print my reference in black and white. And especially at the beginning I use this, not so much when I'm putting my colors in, but this lends itself to using masking fluid, which I've done in all of those 3 that are on the easels, I've used masking fluid to retain some of the highlights and the whitest whites there. On my portraits, very little, if any. On the gal here, I used masking fluid on her earring and on her necklace, and that's it. Because it can leave really hard lines, which is what you want in reflections of glass and metal, but not what you want on a face. So when I want soft edges, I'm not going to use my masking fluid, even though you can sometimes go back and soften edges from where the masking fluid was. It's not something I want on features, so I don't use it really on faces for portraits at all. But I'm going to show you some of the techniques. But this gives me an outline of really where are my highlights. It shows me my whitest whites and what I want to retain for paper. And then I go from looking at these. I keep pulling things out of the oven. It's so fun. And this is, again, I just kept taking pictures because I did some things ahead before I'll jump in and I will paint. But I wanted to show you some of the things I had done ahead. So this is what the drawing looked like. And then I think I did a video. I did a video. Because I don't want to leave anything out, but I'm going to have to speed this up because it's going to be way too slow. So from having, and can you see that without too much glare? Yeah. Okay. From having my drawing on, I put the masking fluid on first, so out of order. Should have masking fluid. Yes.
What kind of masking fluid do you prefer?
Okay, so I thought I showed that somewhere. Hold on. No, that's masking. Okay, well, I'm just going to show you the next one. I'm going to do this a little bit. Next one, because I have these nicely in order. So masking fluid goes on. Masking fluid I do use, I have different ones. So I have the PBO, which dries blue. There are times when I want it really to show, and there are other times that I find it distracting. So this is mostly clear. You can see it kind of dries to a yellowish tone, but I was turned on to this when I took the Tom Lynch workshop. He talked about this one and I figured I'll go buy it and try it. For this project, I use this fine line applicator, and it really is a fine line applicator. And I somewhere show myself putting masking fluid on. But anyway, so from this point, I definitely started to add what I was going to show as, I chose cobalt blue to be my sky color. So I started to put some of the colors on, and I am gonna make this go a little faster. I think I can. Let's see, how do I do it? No, I'm pretty sure I can. Oh yeah, here we go. All right, I'm speeding up my process here. Okay.
Have to move it.
Yeah, I have to physically move it to do that.
That's impressive.
Oh yeah, right? I'm very impressive.
You are.
So this was hanging my cell phone over the desk while I was painting, and I tried to get my sky color in where I thought that would go. And then I did add a few of other shapes. Basically, I want to put some color down, but it's not going to be terribly dark because I'm going to put more masking fluid on top of this.
Oh.
And I do want to get more shapes in that headlamp since I zoomed in on it so much. So there's some dirty kind of street color. There's maybe trees. And I can actually go back to my reference photo and zoom in on that too, just to kind of show you some of the things that I noticed. So there's like a building that's kind of brown. There's a lot of brown buildings in Albuquerque. So I get all these colors in. I'm going faster. Oh my gosh, I'm amazing. Look how fast that is. Okay, get all these colors on, and I even started to put some of these reflections off to the side, chrome on there. before I quit that. So going back to this, if I zoom in on this to show you some of the reflections that I was looking at, specifically here, you can see that the street is here, the sky, whoops, the sky is up high, and there's definitely a building and some kind of tree shape, something there. The chrome is reflecting the paint in some places. This little lamp down here is not in what I'm going to be painting, but if I zoom in here, you can see this lamp is reflected down and off to the side again. See it over here?
Yes.
And it's reflected again down here. So also the street, I don't know if I can show it very well. So here's sky reflected in the paint, not just the chrome, but in the paint. And then down here, if I zoom in, this is street. These are buildings. Oop. Oh, you can see it here too, buildings and cars. I mean, so if I zoom in on the paint here on this very side, there's some kind of Jeep over there. But the sky does this weird, and it had to do with the shape of the car. The sky is in this area, and the street curves all the way around. So these are just cool reflections that show up in different surfaces. So out of the oven comes the next one. All right, so then we're at the stage where I have painted, and now I need to do masking again, right? And then I showed the masking fluid because I wasn't sure I was going to remember to talk about everything. Whoops, nope. And there I am masking with the fine line applicator.
Do you have to really water your fluid down to use those applicators?
Not at all.
No?
Straight. Yeah. So one thing about masking fluid is do not shake, stir. Something I have learned is to store it upside down. So when I'm not using masking fluid for a while, I leave the bottle upside down. And then when I'm ready to use it again, the fresh stuff is here. So something might have dried out at the bottom of my bottle, but I can open it and get some fresh masking fluid out. Yes?
Which brand was that?
This is called Incredible White Mask.
And is that a separate container that you put that in, or is that fine line?
The fine line is sold separately.
Is it an applicator?
Yes.
And then you put that inside there?
You can buy these empty, or you can buy these with some stuff in them already.
Okay.
And I bought mine empty and filled it.
A few years ago, somebody taught that, and they said when you're storing those, store those
Sideways.
on the side,
Yeah.
not up, because
Yeah.
otherwise that little nib gets filled.
Yeah, and these can definitely gum up and get clogged, and it doesn't take that much to unclog them, very honestly. The pin in it will unclog it, and if you have to take the top off, you can usually, if it has dried out at all, take that same pin and pull the gum out, and it'll just sort of free itself. So they're really not that, I don't find them hard to maintain at all. And I have heard some people say that if you have Goo Gone under the kitchen sink, that'll get this stuff off too. So if it got clogged, you can use your Goo Gone. So more masking at this point. So this does dry pretty light, and these are photocopies. I haven't even shown you the one that I worked on yet. I'm getting there. So last thing that I did was that quick video just kind of showing you getting some more masking on. And that's the point where I stopped, and we'll paint some with you tonight. But I wanted to get some of those things on already and just kind of show you that process, because it takes so long to put all that masking on, and this is a 1 hour demo. So that was not gonna happen in 1 hour. And I always choose complicated things. So even though I looked for less complicated, I kept coming up with things that were gonna take too long and be complicated for this. So throw all of those off to the side. Okay, so the other thing I do when I'm planning is I play around with my colors. And so, yeah, I mean, I had something else going, but I played around with, you know, what colors do I like for this? And I have this iridescent electric blue that I thought would be really fun to use on the paint, which I've not used on any project yet. Also, when I took David Amslam's workshop, I purchased some peacock blue, which is new for me. I always use a phthalo blue, phthalo green, and those make a peacock when you put them together, but it's different. So I'm gonna play with that too, I think, put some of that on my palette. And those are not my regular colors, because I do kind of have a core set of colors that I go to, and then depending on the project, I'll put some other fun things out on the palette. All right, so that's the stage where this is.
So what did you mask the second time around?
Yeah, I didn't.
What did I mask?
What area?
Well, just, yeah.
So I masked, so if you look at the first time, hold on, let me get the first one out again because we can compare them. So first masking, I was just going for the whitest whites that you see here. So if you want to compare them a little bit. So this circle is definitely masked. There were a few really white light areas that I wanted to keep a sparkle. So I put some lines in, and this is blown up compared to the size I'm painting it, but yeah, so this highlight, for instance, I didn't do the entire area. I gave it kind of a sparkle, and I'm hoping to stay lighter around it and then get darker. And then when I added the rest of the masking, I put a lot of little lines. So second time around, because now I have some color underneath, I added a lot of little lines. And they may not be exactly where they're supposed to go, but it won't matter. They're directional, and it'll give you the idea that it's a headlamp when it's done.
Thank you.
How do you take your masking off?
I use the gum eraser thing, this.
It doesn't pull any of the undercover color?
Well, that was such a light undercoat anyway, it's allowed to be, and I can always go, if I'm not worried about it, because I could always go back and touch up areas if I needed to. But it's definitely reserving hard lines, which for these reflections, that's what I want. So I guess I should paint. Yikes. Let's paint a little bit. All right, I'll keep that one nearby. I don't really think I need the black and white specifically to reference anymore. I was going to put, so I don't know, are any of you interested in my palette? This is a simple travel palette that I've been using ever since I started with watercolor. Sometimes I put extra colors in. This particular palette has a little pull-out tray, which I added by gluing in some little bead trays, which give me a couple of extra mixing areas.
That's a good idea. Yeah, it is.
Well, just shout out questions. Was afraid I wasn't going to talk enough, and now I've done nothing but talk the whole time.
Where do you get those little tiny?
What kind of paper? This is Arches, 140-pound cold press. It's just what I had on hand. I do also use Fabriano paper now. I've learned to like it. It was different. It was a challenge at the beginning, getting used to it for me. But I do like it. It erases easier.
Did you say cold or hot press?
Cold press.
Okay. Sorry,
Yeah, cold press. It's got a little tooth. Yeah, and I feel like I can smooth edges better with the cold press. and I get a little bit stuck with hard edges when I don't even know what brush I want to use. I haven't decided what I'm doing here. So let me just go in here first, and then I'll look at some of the chrome, and then I'll work my way out too. And I didn't even draw in for this sample today what the glass and all the trees that are reflected in there. I was just sort of focused on the light and the paint itself. The other thing I suppose this one is going to need is quite a bit of black to really make those other highlights stand out. And I didn't bring it, but I have one palette. It's not really a palette. It's more like a pan about this size at home that I just keep throwing color in, and so it's like my black mud, my mix of. So I don't waste. But I definitely have go-to colors for mixing my blacks. I guess I should paint while I talk. I don't usually do that, so that's hard
to do.
What do you like to use for your blacks?
For my blacks, I like to use the phthalo blue, phthalo green, and alizarin crimson mix. And there's also the ultramarine blue with burnt sienna mix. But it's a very clean and dark black if I use phthalo blue, phthalo green, and alizarin. So I'm going to put just a little more sky color in since I went back and this is now more vibrant, more paint than what I used the first time round, going into the same areas. You have to keep me talking, because once I paint, I'm just going to be silent. I do one thing or another, but not both at the same time. Like, don't ask me to chew gum while I don't know how to do that. What kind of brain is that can only do one thing? I'm not a multitasker. So I'm just looking at what shapes are there.
What is your process when you take a picture with your camera?
Yeah.
Is it an Android or an I?
I have an iPhone.
Okay. Then to transfer, you just send that to your iPad?
Eventually. I play with it a lot on my iPhone in the edit settings a lot. At that point, I can play with the colors already. I do a lot of photo editing right there in the camera, cropping and color, just changing colors and enhancing colors, maybe playing with the contrast or the shadows. Gosh, so much. There's so much you can do. There's obviously that wand button that does it for you, but there's so much beyond that that's fun to play with, that I found that I can do a lot with.
Do you always paint wet and dry?
For this, yes. Yes. For skies, I often do wet into wet. But for something like this, I think I have more control wet into dry, and I know what I can do with and how long I have until it dries. I mean, that's more of a, you do that over time, you figure that stuff out over time, how much time you have before. Can you see my mixing? I kind of make muddy colors for this because it's not supposed to necessarily be anything, but it needs to be a lot darker than what I had previously.
What's that blue you're using? Is that the
Cobalt
electric?
is what
Oh,
I
that's
took
cobalt.
out right now. Yeah, I think for the paint color on the vehicle, I want to pull out some of the peacock and the electric, whatever that is, the shiny one.
Yeah.
Iridescent electric blue. I thought I might try that.
How many layers do you think you'll have to do for the?
I don't think I need to do that much more because I've got the under layer and the masking on it. I think I can probably just, after this, take the masking off of the headlamp. And I guess the colors are going to resemble what I think is on the street and on the surrounding areas. So I'd say it's probably all I would do there. The blue's a little brighter than I wanted in here, but we know everything dries about 30% lighter. So maybe it's okay when it dries. And I can show you that black that I'll mix that up too. This is some of my phthalo blue. I'm seeing phthalo green. I'm seeing the sort of teal color of the paint reflected even in the headlight. So I'm already looking at taking some of this, and maybe I should put some of that peacock out since I'm planning on playing with that. And I have an empty well right now. Put some electric blue iridescent stuff out too. Why not? So I've demoed before, but never for this many people. It's a little nerve-wracking. And I sit and think about my paintings a lot. I don't jump right in often.
How long does it normally take you to finish something like this?
Well, the one with all the little balls like toys took me months because I kept getting like cross-eyed and I'd have to walk away before I could come back again to that one. That one was a puzzle. It kind of depends, and honestly, I did some of those quite a while ago, so I want to say maybe I've gotten faster, but maybe I haven't. Maybe I'm still just as slow. I do use pretty small brushes, so it's hard to say, and honestly, I don't think I'd want to know how many hours I put into something, because that would be bad. I think that would be bad for me to know that, to know how many hours I put into something. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. But I enjoy doing it. It's literally for me like meditation, sitting here and looking at the little shapes and trying to make them out, and I enjoy doing it.
It's for us watching.
So it is.
Too.
Yeah, I know.
But for me, I mean, this is therapy, I suppose. And for other people, it's driving crazy, I think. So.
Have you ever tried to do something like this without the masking fluid? Been successful,
I think it would take me even longer because then I wouldn't be free to, block in some areas. It would be an even smaller brush if I didn't have the masking fluid. That would be my opinion.
I just didn't realize you masked the second time.
Yeah, why not?
That's interesting to me.
Because why not?
Marion, are you gonna get your darkest value before you take the mask off in or not?
I need to in some areas. So definitely right here I have some mask. I need to get pretty dark inside the headlamp in some of these areas. The area that I would save the mask until I've really put my darkest dark is right next to that and down here. But why don't I just mix up some of the black, then you all can see what I do there. So Thalocane blue. Is it Thalocane? Is it Phthalo? Phthalo? Phthalo, Phthalo? I'm not sure. Someone should correct me if they know the correct way of saying it. I'll call it both names because I don't know which one it should be. So that was the blue, the green, and then add some red to that to make it really dark.
Marion, in reference to, you said, you know, it takes some time to paint like this, and you might go back and lighten or darken some areas, add more shading. How long are you comfortable leaving your masking on before removing it?
That's a great question, because I had one project where it was cemented on and I couldn't get it off anymore. And I did leave it on too long. There are a couple of factors. I have, and that did happen to me with the blue ones, where it was cemented on.
I'm going to ask you your experience with the different brands.
So the only time it cemented on was the blue one, and I had followed someone's directions that said to use soap on my brush when applying, and I think you've all heard it.
Yeah.
I won't do it again because that was the one time that my masking fluid. So what I have now, so I have lots of different things. I use this for this project, but for masking, I'll dip in with one of these bamboo pens. This is my masking bamboo pen, and it's perfect for applying fine lines. It holds it nice, it's great, and it cleans up pretty easily. The other thing I use, if I have bigger areas to cover, and this is Cheap Joe's Ugly Brush. They're cheap, and they are synthetic, purely synthetic. And I wouldn't mind getting it in some soap and water, but I don't know that I want soap on my brush when I do masking anymore because of my one bad experience. So this would clean up too with that Goo Gone if you get it really down in the, and you're not supposed to, if you're using a bristled brush like this, you're not supposed to put it all the way down in there and get your masking fluid up above the ferrule or something. You're supposed to only go about halfway with your masking fluid onto a brush like this so that you can clean it. If you got it all the way up in there, you can throw it away. You could just throw it away. So cheap brushes are great for applying masking fluid.
So back to the question, how long do you leave it on a painting?
How long do I leave it on?
How long do you feel comfortable leaving
Totally
it on?
depends. I think I have had projects where I took it off because I thought it'd been on there too long, and then I had to reapply it because I was scared. But I think you can kind of test it to decide whether it's going to come off still, and when are you going to get back to that project. If you don't think you're going to get back to it for a month, I would say take it off. Certainly you don't want to leave it in a hot car. You don't want to melt it on by using a hot hair dryer. So there are no-nos with masking fluid. There are things you should be aware of with masking fluid, but I've come to love it for some applications. I don't use it in all of my paintings, but I've come to really like it. I know there are people who hate it and who are afraid of it. But
You just dip that little bamboo pen in?
Mm-hmm.
You're not like filling it
So
up.
I will often use a little disposable Dixie cup that I put some of this in, and then I will dip my bamboo pen into that. This one comes like the lid you're supposed to use to put a little bit in. So you're supposed to pour a little bit in and then put the cap back on to keep it fresh, and then just dip in right there.
I wonder what that was for.
Yeah, that's the idea with this one. I think I'm never gonna,
I think I would dip it right in.
never gonna be close to finishing this thing. Let's see. So any other questions? Happy to answer them, but I am totally easily distracted and then I don't paint. That's a problem.
This is encouraging, actually, because you're painting bigger areas than I thought you'd be painting.
Every little one.
Yeah, no, bigger area, it frees me to paint a little bit bigger area because I'm not worried about saving lines now.
Right.
Because I've already done that. That plan is in place, so to speak. So now I can just kind of dip into different colors, and if I didn't mask that area, maybe I'm a little more careful around it. This looks pretty dark here. I may dip into my black mixture to get nice and dark there. So this black mixture that I made can go warm or cool depending on whether I put more blue or green in it. So it's a versatile mix where if I'm more on the blue side, then it's a cooler black. And if I put more green in it, then it's a warmer black. So it's one of my go-to combinations. After taking a lot of workshops through AWA, which are so fun, by the way, I've learned some other combinations because of other jurors and other members who have done workshops, and I've tried different things, and I like the way those work too. So just kind of look at the dark in there. Look at that. I feel like it needs it there too. I can go back up where I didn't get maybe dark enough up here. Throw some of that in. It's a very clean black. Also, this one's not those phthalacanes are not granulating. So there's this really clean black, that mix.
Wow.
And layering these colors on, other colors can show through, which is really nice. How am I doing?
Great.
Perfect. Great.
Okay. If we're learning something, then it's not for nothing.
Nope.
Right? Right.
So are you using Winsor Newton?
Oh, I have a mixture. My very first set that I bought when I thought I wanted to try watercolors was a small set by Core, Q-O-R, that brand. So I started with those, and then I added some Daniel Smith and some Winsor Newton, and I've got M. Graham's now, Holbein. What can I say? I got a lot of mixture now. There's no one brand. There are certain colors that I prefer from certain brands.
What's the phthalo colors? The phthalo colors?
So Daniel Smith is the blue and Winsor Newton is the green. No, sorry. M. Graham is the green. M. Graham is the green. But that's just because that's what I got. So that looks good. We've even got some blossoms and things happening, which is kind of fun because I'm allowed to put on some bigger swaths of color here. It is a little bit freeing once you have that masking fluid on.
Yeah.
And that's what I didn't want. I didn't want you all to see me putting masking fluid on because that just is tedious work that takes so long. That would have been boring.
We appreciate it. Yeah.
I'm getting a little brave with that black now.
Was that brown you used a sienna, or what was that?
In here,
Yeah.
both siennas, I believe. A mixture of burnt sienna, raw sienna. On this particular palette, I have the Daniel Smith burnt sienna, which is totally different than the Winsor Newton that everybody is used to. It's brown.
Oh.
And it makes a great black. So I keep it too. I love Winsor Newtons and I use it definitely in my portraits. And I'm sure I used it in the base back there. But the Daniel Smith has its place too. I like their burnt sienna for other applications. So yeah, and that's again just something you learn by doing, mixing. And I love mixing colors. Jim can tell you. Jim paints with me on Wednesdays, and I go around and help people figure out which color they need to get in their painting. And that's like my favorite part, is mixing colors.
Where are you on Wednesdays? Where are you and Jim?
I teach a watercolor class at the Arizona Art Supply on Wednesdays.
Oh.
And everybody in that class works on their own thing at their own pace. So I work my way around the room and just help everybody on their individual projects. And I love mixing colors, so I'll go around and just keep helping people mix colors. So that's my favorite thing to do. It's playing with colors. So I think you get the idea of that. Let me come over to the chrome. I need to get some sky in on the chrome on this side over here. And there's trees overhanging this vehicle. So we're going to try to get some trees on there too. So since I started with cobalt blue as my sky color, that's what I'm going to continue doing. Most often I use the phthalo blue as my sky color in Arizona, and I think Albuquerque's pretty similar, but I don't know, I started this one with, so because it's sky, I'm gonna wet my area first. That's what I do. So, come in here, yeah, that's wet an area. Maybe I get a little bit bigger brush.
So you're really painting this segment by segment, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Well, because that's where I see it. I see my sky over here, and you know, there's going to be some sky shining through where those trees are, so I can get some of the sky color into where the trees are also. But yes, I paint it the way I see it. So, yes. And there were clouds in the sky, so I can leave little areas white. This is sky up here. If I get into another area, it's not going to bother me too much. So I think the trees are going to go somewhere just up there. I have a Daniel Smith sap green here. I prefer it over Winsor Newton's. Winsor Newton's is just too spring green for me. And then I always add some ultramarine blue to my sap green, just to vary it a little bit. But it's pretty light on the, can you still see this a little bit?
Yeah.
It's pretty light toward the top. So I'm gonna just get some color and throw it on. I hope for the best. Move it around, and I did switch brushes. I've got a little bit smaller brush so I can kind of put it where I want it. I didn't exactly want it there, but there it is, so we're going to live with it. And there's my ultramarine blue. And I could just drop some of that in to get a little bit darker areas. Maybe I don't have enough on my brush. But that's going to give me the idea, definitely, that there are some trees and leaves and stuff up there. Oop. Too much, too little. A little more sap. So underneath the buildings is the street. I'm definitely going to have a nice street color, and that's where I'm going to go for my burnt sienna and my ultramarine blue. I think that's a good street color. And it's pretty light because it's in full sunlight, so I'm going to add some water to it, water it down. And it is wet on dry. And I did have some markings on there where there's lighter and darker, but that can be done maybe with the second go around. Does it look like street yet?
Yeah.
A little bit. So that's going to get a darker line of street where the two pieces of chrome come together. And this had some darker bits. We had like maybe the tree left some shadow on the ground in places, so it got a little bit darker in places. Down here, goes into the reflection of the paint color. So, I'll give it some of that. And now at home, I have to say, I do turn my painting a lot, just so that my hand is not, so I'm not upside down trying to paint something. I'll just turn the painting, especially with a circle like this. Notice that there's some sky color again in here. And basically I work my way around. So I definitely need the sky to reflect up here again. some other stuff reflecting. But I paint the shapes that I see there. Going into my black, it's pretty dark over here. Throw some in. I think that those dark bits sort of make the painting in the end when I get some nice darks in. So we'll probably have some, throwing in some sap green in places because I can. Not because I necessarily see it, but if it's a shade of or a value of, it'll work. Sometimes you make this stuff up, and sometimes you don't. And I guess I could put some of the darkest stuff in. Grab some black. So, don't follow my map. And I think I'm somewhere here to put some nice dark in. And I don't have to be that careful because I do have my masking on there.
Marion?
Yeah.
Is there any part of this chrome that is just the color of chrome and not reflecting?
I don't think so. No.
So is that always the case? It's always reflecting?
Well, I would guess what its juxtaposition is, where it is placed. Because if that chrome was in a dark room, it's going to reflect the darkness of that room, and it's going to look more gray.
Okay.
But it's always reflecting something.
So you're always painting the reflections and not the chrome itself?
Yeah.
So no silver on your palette there?
Nope.
Just checking.
Nope. Nope. What did I just pick up? Something blue. There was a reason I did that. Oh, I was going to go into here.
Tell me about the composition. And you decided to just do the headlight?
I decided to do the headlight because I thought I was making my life easier. Because I have a 1-hour demo to present. And I wanted to show reflections. And I could have done maybe a jar of marbles, but that's also really a lot of detail. Like, you don't know how much detail there is until you start doing it. And when somehow blowing it up just makes it worse. And it just enhances the fact that this is a really detailed thing. So
Marion, when you get to this dark part down here in the corner, the lower left, yeah, will you use a big brush or will you stick with a small brush?
I will use a bigger brush, and I can do some of the paint. So some of the paint of the car rather than just the chrome.
Yes.
I'm just curious about your technique because this is lovely.
Okay. Well, then maybe what I do is just post this when it's finished so you can see what that all looks like when I take the masking off. But this sort of gives you an idea of how I approach this. So for this lower area, I need to get reflections in first. And so I would be first looking at the color of the building that's reflected over there. So it needs some of this color, and this has to dry before I can go back with the color of the paint of the vehicle, the teal.
Oh, okay.
So I wouldn't want to put the teal color on until this is fully dry.
I think it looks darker in our view. than your
Oh, it
picture.
does, it looks almost black.
Yeah, that's why,
Oh, you're gonna put teal over there. Oh, I see. Oh, for heaven's sake.
because it looks black on the projector.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Is a darker, it is like the shadow area here, so
Right.
it's definitely going to be a darker color of teal, but it's still going to be teal.
Right.
Gotcha.
So I'll have to darken that.
Yeah, I think I see this in
So,
How would you darken the teal?
probably, and I haven't done this yet, probably I would try first adding some of the alizarin to it to see what that does, because I think that would probably neutralize it a little bit, knock it down and give it depth of color. That alizarin is always on my palette, alizarin crimson. It's always on my palette. I can't live without French ultramarine blue or alizarin crimson. I use them in so many mixes. Those two I have to have. I can change out my yellows. I can change up my reds, sometimes my blues, but I must have French ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson on my palette. So that shouldn't take too long to dry. So up here, on this part of the vehicle, the sky is reflected, but it's not the same color as it is on the chrome. So I definitely have a blue sky, but it looks different because it's on paint versus on the chrome. So I have to teal up my sky color, give it a little bit of the paint color of the car, but still have it look like sky.
So you won't underpaint the car color and then come back and darken or anything? You're just
You know, if I want some hard edges, like where these, where the suggestion of the reflection of the leaves of the trees are, then maybe I would let my sky dry and come back on with the suggestion of leaves. So let's say, so here's this new peacock that I'm trying out, and some phthalo green. I don't really know what color. I guess I should mix up enough that I can use it all over the car, right? So there's more green and more blue. Way more blue. And I have a scratch paper here somewhere. I can't remember when I was playing with these colors which one I liked. So, oh. That's nice.
That's a pretty
I
color.
could work with that. So for that to be kind of an undertone, I would just take a little bit over there and maybe add some of my sky color to that. And more water. Maybe more water. And let's see if it looks a little bit like sky next to. But not the same blue that my sky is, that I chose for my sky that's on the chrome necessarily. So this is also sky color. It needs to get darker, but this is sky color. So that would probably work for me. It's taking the color that I mixed up for the car to be, taking a little bit over and adding some cobalt to it and watering it down, because this is really reflected light, so it's very light up here.
Right.
So sky again, I generally wet the area first. It's just what I do. It's not a rule, it's kind of a habit. But it comes down. My water's turning green now.
Do you want me to change your water for you?
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's gonna all be green anyway.
I could move them for her. Oh, do you want me to fill that one? It's not.
No, don't bother. Thanks though. Okay. So,
I'm trying to be the teacher's pet.
thanks. You already are. You let me borrow your book. So this is sky. And the sky comes down the side of the car a little bit. Definitely is not the same color as that. Well, that's what I'm suggesting, is the sky reflected off of the teal car now. And I did have some masking right there. And this area was not pre-wet that I'm doing right now, so it's taking the color a lot darker.
It's a pretty color.
And let's try, just because I need to figure out how to make it darker anyway, I'll try adding just a little alizarin in there. See what that does. See if we like that. I think I'm going to be okay with it. So now I also need the leaves on the tree. Just take some more of that. So that's allowed to get pretty dark wherever I'm going to be suggesting leaves. And as detailed as I am, I'm okay with suggesting. I know it looks like I put every, well, I have actually done a dog where I put almost every hair on it. But sometimes it's okay just to leave some of these things to the imagination. So that needs to stay lighter. I forgot my roll of paper towels at home. So these are staining colors, so I'm trying to lift just a little bit on that edge. And it's going to keep bleeding, of course. But I think it'll be okay. Wrong side. I think the blue sky over here needs a little more blue. When I'm looking at it, it needs to be a little bit more like what I did in some of those areas, and maybe not everywhere, but some of it. That was wet on dry, and it's my sky, so I got to soften my edges.
Whose cobalt do you use?
Pretty sure I have it from Daniel Smith and M. Graham. I'm not sure which one's on my palette. I'm not certain. But it may look different because it's on the screen there than when you look at it and I hold it up. I know from taking workshops here that the colors can be distorted.
Right. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So maybe I'll just hold it up for you guys.
Yeah, that's really pretty. That's pretty. Oh, I'm like going to compare it. Where'd it go?
Where'd it go? So that's the beginning of what would be the car color, but it should get much more of the teal. I have to mix up more of that. So when I'm mixing colors, I generally like to use a synthetic brush and not too big, so I'm not wasting paint when I'm doing my mixing. And then I can go to a bigger brush to apply it in bigger areas. I've got a little bit darker. So if I come down here, this is definitely a darker area. I can just wet an area. Let's see how that goes. This is all experiment for you guys. I've never done any of this before. Not intimidating at all to paint for an artist group.
Right.
Could have been more crowded.
Yeah.
And you see, we're all running up there to do it next.
Yeah. I did notice that. All right, so I have kind of a bigger area. This is only an 8. That's a bigger brush for me. I mean, I've got a 14 on the table. Ooh, let's do that. Let's do 14.
Go nuts.
Actually, I own some bigger brushes, and I've been using hake brushes and stuff for some techniques, but not something like this.
Especially in a staining color.
All right, let's put some color on.
Yeah.
And that's going to need some of that red in there to get dark enough, I think. Let's go ahead and put some in. Just talk. Use the smaller brush for mixing. Now it's darker. So yeah, so the alizarin crimson is darkening this up nicely. And while it's wet, I should be able to pick up some color if it was too much somewhere or I want to accentuate a certain area.